that when fighting first started, you had strikers that got out there and got submitted. So what's the first thing they did on Monday? They signed up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Then you had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters who started getting taken down, and they weren't able to get the submission because the wrestlers started recognizing the submission, so they started going to wrestling. Then you had guys that could kind of do all three, wrestle, jiu-jitsu, and box a little bit, but guess what was making a difference? The ones that had cardio, so strength and conditioning came to play. And then I think we went through a phase where guys had mind coaches, life coaches, psych coaches, whatever, the mental game. But now what's going to happen is going forward, what's going to make the difference is who could actually maximize the impact they make in those 3, 5, 7, 10 years that you have available in the sport. Because the windows are getting shorter and shorter because there's more great fighters out there. And so you got to make the most of it. You're not going to have the Dan Hendersons, the Tito Ortizes. I don't know if you'll have 20-year careers anymore like you did in the past. So that's why I really feel like a fighter should connect with this song. It should mean something. It should be part of the persona or shtick that they've created.
I agree 100%. Hey, George, do you think that the touch ass in the park phase is going to be coming up next due to the Conor McGregor whole touch ass in the park thing?
The touch butt in the park. No, you know what? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so here's what I think. I think it had a chance. I think that body movement, all that stuff had a chance. And I wouldn't say it was going to be everybody trying to find themselves a movement coach or anything based off Conor McGregor, but I think people took notice. People paid attention. But as soon as they figured out that, wait a minute, the time that Conor could be using to address submission defense or wrestling is that time that he's been putting out for this, touch butt in the park. And that's why you didn't see much touch butt in the park the second time around. But what you did see was Conor making it a little tougher for Diaz to get that takedown and for him to keep it into more of a standing affair. So I think people took notice, but no, it's not part of our future.
Wonderful. I hope not. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the show. I wanted to have you on, George, to, one, mainly speak about Tito Ortiz and his career. At the beginning of the week when I was putting the show together, I was like, who can I talk to that would fully be able to speak about Tito Ortiz and his career and what he's meant to the sport? And the only name that came to my mind was you. You've been the person that I've listened to longest in this sport. Your voice and Goz's, of course, have been the only voices that I've listened to for 10 years in this sport. And I thought, I got to get Gigi on to give a send-off to Tito Ortiz. So let's hear, George, what Tito Ortiz has been to you. And I know that you guys interviewed him the other day, and I thought that was, really cool because I had contacted you on the same day just to kind of talk about him, and you guys had him on the show the next day. I thought that was kind of really fantastic. So let's talk about Tito Ortiz and what he's meant not only to the sport but to us as well, George.
Well, okay. I'm excited about this because, listen, if you were to tell me we have 30 seconds before we go to commercial, tell me what you think about Tito, I would just be forced to say, hey, look, he is an iconic figure in the sport. He was a world champion. He sold a lot of tickets. He wasn't the most talented, all-around type guy. He kind of had more of a limited skill set. But, boy, did he come at the right time. He did great. He's a Hall of Famer. He deserves it all. But because we have time, I think we can break this down in many ways. For one, Tito Ortiz made it easy for you to root for him, but at the same time made it easy for you to root for him and hate him and go back and forth. And that's what made it unique, because you get tired of the excuses sometimes when he lost, but at the same time, you had a fond appreciation for the fact that he was at least consistent with, his support for the military, talking about his fans, the Mexican-American heritage, the same walkout song, the Punishment Athletics brand. There was really something to that consistency. And so even when he had the losing streak, and if you were a hater of Tito Ortiz, you kind of just felt like he was good for the sport needed him. Therefore, you found yourself cheering for him in certain bouts. especially when he was getting doubted, especially when Dana would bully him or other fighters would bully him. He just kept going out there and doing his thing. So, we have time to talk about it, and we can take it in many directions. What I can say is he's a Hall of Famer already. Well-deserved of that. He's a former champion who had some title defenses. He was one of the godfathers of ground and pound. Because Mark Coleman, let's face it, you kind of put that on the map first. But his ground and pound was the front of his head, along with punches and elbows. And I thought Tito did it a little bit differently. He really, really used the elbows to hit his advantage. I mean, so now I can start to branch off and say, had he been in Pride, he may not have had that success because those elbows would have been taken away. But he wasn't in Pride. He was in the UFC, and people had to adjust to him. Another thing Tito did was, this guy's about 6'3", Proteus. He's about 6'3", and he walks around 235.
Mm-hmm.
And he got down to 205, and that's because he couldn't get down to 200. So they created 205 for him because he was it. He was Conor McGregor back in the day. So, 205 is an odd number. 200 is a round number. Why did they do it? For Tito Ortiz. He could get to 205, and he got away with fighting a lot of guys that weren't as big as him because he was really good at getting his body down to 205, at being the bigger guy, and it may have made a difference. In fact, it made a difference in some of his fights, but in some of them it didn't. But because we're in the leather helmet stages of the sport, it didn't matter. We had to accept that Babalu, undersized guy or not, was going to be an opponent of his, or Ken Shamrock, undersized guy, was going to be an opponent of his. Vandalay, another guy. Lyoto Machida, another guy. Those guys those guys went all the way down to 185 for crying out loud. So there was some matches there that his sheer size and strength enabled him, to keep being Tito Ortiz and keep being great. And it's not his fault. It's not his fault. His parents conceived him at this time, and that he was this part of the generation. But if Tito is just starting out today, he might not have as an illustrious of a career. Anyway, what's done is done. He came in, he did his thing, and now let's forward to this past Saturday. We knew it was his last fight, and it was kind of the end. That, along with Dan Henderson, we're closing chapters here that are going to be a part of the history of this sport, man. So it was a little sad to see that happen. He went out there, he got the win, he did the Gravedigger stuff, and then afterwards, I thought Bellator allowed him the proper send-off with the gloves and then him walking up that ramp for the last time. I thought all that was really, really cool, you know what I mean? And I thought it was very well-deserving for Tito. It was his night, man. Not too many people can write those types of scripts, and he got one.
Yeah, and I really want to kind of get into some stories about Tito that means something to us, because I remember Tito. I remember being a fan of Tito. He's got the two flags. He's got the beanie on. Back in the day, that was we hadn't seen that before. He'd come out and he was very electric, and he did the whole Gravedigger thing, like you mentioned. And then there was a different phase of Tito Ortiz, and there was the Ultimate Fighter, Tito Ortiz. And I remember, getting before the Ultimate Fighter, that season that he was on, thinking, screw Tito, I'm tired of Tito. And then I saw him on the Ultimate Fighter, and that changed my mind on Tito Ortiz. And it's amazing how Tito has been able to do that. You know what I mean? He's been able to stay in our memory, stay in our mind, and still draw numbers. But we don't want to talk about the numbers yet, George. I want to talk about some stories that you remember about Tito Ortiz, something that made you gravitate towards him, or anything, really.
Well, this is a guy that was from my neck of the woods. I'm from Southern California, so is he. They call him the Huntington Beach bad boy, and Huntington Beach is maybe 10 miles away from Santa Ana. He's originally from Santa Ana, Hispanic kid like myself. But he moved to Huntington Beach, and he actually shared the story on our show why he did it, because he was involved in gangs, and there was a friend of his whose life got taken away in a drive-by, and so the mom and the dad moved him to Huntington Beach, and I don't blame him. Okay, so anyway, at the same time, when he came on the scene, Proteus, he kind of represented a little bit of, how can I explain this? So as a young kid growing up from Santa Ana, Hispanics, you tended to maybe clash with people from Huntington Beach. Most people from Huntington Beach are Caucasian. So at the time, it'd be a little bit of a, I wouldn't say it was like Civil War or nothing like that. But I would say that if Hispanics rolled into Huntington Beach and went to a club and started talking to their chicks, they'd have a problem with it, vice versa. So when guys from Huntington Beach like Tank Abbott were out there fighting and Tito Ortiz, immediately I didn't like them. Ortiz not as much because he was Hispanic, but Tank just because he was kind of like that bully white guy bouncer that I remembered. So I wanted to hate him, but ever since I was a kid, I also gravitated towards heels, and he was a heel. He was a bad guy. So, it was like a love-hate with that guy. But I just remember these guys stoked emotions out of me. I either wanted them to get their asses kicked, or once they had gotten their asses kicked enough times, I wanted them to win because I wanted them to stick around. So I'm kind of one of those flip-floppers when it comes to stuff like that. So that's kind of what I went through with Tito. Tito was Huntington Beach, and he did this, he did that. He started working a few dudes. But you know what? I remember I was at a bar in Santa Ana with my buddy Big Ralph, and Tito was fighting Frank Shamrock. And I had just had enough of Tito. You know what I mean? Enough was enough. He won some fights, and I just wanted him to get his ass kicked. And there was this big crowd from Huntington Beach, like surfers and skaters. And at the time, it was hard to find a club or a bar that showed fights because, remember, they were taking off cable and certain cable systems and satellites. So when you found one, trust me, you were there with another couple hundred people. And I remember the bar was mostly Ortiz fans, and they were cheering hard, and Tito was yet on his way yet again to win another fight over against an undersized guy. And what happened? Frank Shamrock taught him a lesson that night. His cardio was better than Tito's. Tito acknowledged that. He said that going forward, that, he ran out of gas, and after that, Tito Ortiz became a cardio machine. But I still remember the feeling in that bar, just thinking, man, like on the one hand, I want to say, like, fuck yeah, suck it, and take that or whatever. But I also knew it was me and Big Ralph against 200 others. It wouldn't have been a good night, so we just tiptoed out of there. We didn't cheer too hard, but I remember it was a classic, man. It was a classic of a fight. A lesson was taught, and I just remember I could tell there was a shift in what I was saying earlier, from jiu-jitsu domination to wrestling domination to now cardio being a factor, So I was watching the sport kind of evolve and change before my eyes, and it was really, really a cool thing. So we're talking late 90s here. Then, again, Tito bounces back. He wins the title with, I think it was against Vanderlei in Japan. And, Vanderlei was taking it to him early on, but then Tito's size, he was just too much. So Tito wins in Japan, and he became so big that he actually was bigger than the promotion. So yet again, we saw the sport evolve in a different way, not inside the octagon, but outside the octagon. It became real dangerous, and Dana White recognized that. Lorenzo Fertitta recognized it because this guy was pretty savvy. He realized, hang on a second, I got a worth here, and these pay-per-views are being sold. Why is my share not as good as it should be when I'm holding up my end of the bargain? So he started to negotiate hard, and of course, I think the UFC realized that we cave into this guy, we may have to cave into others. And that's kind of what's happening right now in mixed martial arts. You notice they tore up Tony Ferguson's contract. They look like they added an extra zero there. Conor McGregor is talking about, every single fight he seems to want a bigger piece of the pie, including, the company. All these champions that are winning titles and they're asking for money fights. So that's kind of what's happening now. That was happening about 20 years ago or 18 years ago or whenever that was. Mm-hmm. And so it was a learning experience for the UFC, but at the same time, Tito got hate for it. Why? Because we wanted to see Tito fight, whether it was for him to win or for him to get his ass kicked. We were missing the sport's biggest star. Except now Conor gets a lot of credit and love for what he's doing, but at the time, Tito wasn't getting it. Why? Because there weren't many other great fighters at the time, and if Tito was gone, the UFC ship was sinking. Right now, Conor decides to sit the next year. It'll hurt them. It'll hurt their pocketbook, but they got a lot of other superstars, and the UFC is massive right now, so they can survive that. Well, back then it was a little bit different. So it sucks that Tito kind of got some of that hate from fans, when in reality, all he was doing was looking to get a piece of that pie. That same pie that people want to, that 4.2 billion pie that people want a piece of now, Tito wanted a piece of whatever it was worth back then. So, just taking that trip kind of down history lane with what we're doing right here, I hope some people realize that some of the reasons you may have hated Tito back in the past are actually pretty valid reasons now. That's one of them. Now, there were some other ones. The excuses never sat too well, and whatever else. But that's one I can point to that I can say I have his back on.
Yeah, and I remember those days, and I remember, how much of a different world it was, and just if anybody's listening, there's a bit of a delay on George's side, so I apologize if anybody's hearing that. Anyways, let's push on. Like I said to the audience, this is the perfect person that we needed to have on to talk about Tito Ortiz. And for any casual fans or for any new fans that are listening, it would do you well to go back and look at, what Tito Ortiz did. And as George was saying, he did change the sport. And let's remember, George, that Dana White was his manager at one point, right? I mean, this all started from very, very humble beginnings, right? And they ended up having a feud, and anyways, we'll come full circle, but let's talk about that for a second. Let's break that open real quick, because that was a messy time. I mean, Dana was his manager, and then things kind of went a little bit sour. So let's talk about that real quick.
So Dana was managing Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz and a guy named Tiki Gosen. I'm pretty sure you guys remember him too. You'll hear Tiki's name be floated around a lot when Rampage is fighting, because Tiki trains him a lot. So he was their manager, and then he saw this opportunity. I think he heard behind the scenes that SEG was thinking of selling. He found out what the price was. He knew he had these friends from back in high school days that had some money, and they were boxing fans, combat sports fans. He approached them and said, "What would you think of this?" And I think those guys, I'm just going to surmise here. I imagine they said, "Yeah, let's roll the dice. $2 million. We love fights. Maybe we can take this somewhere." There's no way they envisioned what they did, what they wound up doing. But at the same time, they probably thought, I don't think we'll crash and burn either. I mean, these guys are kind of on to something here. They gave Dana White the 10%, and so Dana had to stop being those guys' manager, Liddell, Ortiz, and Tiki. And in that process, though, I think he actually showed the guys just how he can be aggressive and such a great negotiator. And so that actually behooved them, and it actually benefited them when it came time for them to negotiate against Dana White. Hell, I mean, they may have actually already had some sort of a blueprint, from how far Dana White could push the angle as a manager. And so most fighters at the time, I think, were managing themselves or at least having a huge hand in their own negotiations. So, early on, the UFC wasn't worth $4.2 billion, but they did have some money to throw around. I mean, they went $54, $55 million into the hole. And I think Dana knew that they did that, and Dana and Tito and Chuck and Tiki also knew that Dana knew that they knew that. So there was a lot of clashes of ego, and I think Dana in the end sided with Chuck, because Chuck was more like about just tell me when and where, so I can bring my mouthpiece in my cup, like Chael likes to say, Chael Sonnen, so I can fight. He just wants to fuck somebody up. Yeah. And I think Tito started realizing early on, I want to fight, but I'm not as good as some of these guys. And at the same time, I'm a businessman. And I don't know where he got that from. Maybe he buddied up with Dana more than others, or maybe he just ran into the right person at the right time, but he got more of that business sense. I still think it had to do something with the training between him and Rico and Chuck and Rampage, and I think Tito knew, man, of the four of us, there's a good chance I could go 0-3 here. So I better keep control of what I have, which is this belt, this popularity, and so he was able to stretch out certain negotiations or disappear at the right time, make others fight each other, kind of similar to what Conor's doing right now. But I don't hold it against him. Looking back, man, you got all these brain cells and and these concussions and all these other injuries, and who knows if you're ever the same when you walk away. So to look out for oneself looks and sounds selfish to some fans, but it's very prudent if you think about it.
No, absolutely. And again, as I was saying earlier, guys, this is why we had George on, because he's a wealth of knowledge about all of this stuff. And I remember back in the day listening to George speak about Tito and his career and yada, 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 and all of this. And over the years, he's talked about it a number of times. But here's the main question, George. With the numbers that we're hearing coming out of Bellator and the amount of people that watched Bellator 170 on the weekend, does Tito Ortiz stay retired or does he get enticed back? Because clearly he's still a draw, or is it Chael Sonnen? I think it's more Tito though. So what do you think moving forward? Do we see Tito walk away like he said at the press conference? He's in pain, he wants to leave, or do they throw enough money at him where he comes back?
Anytime anybody retires, I guess the naysayer in me makes I want to say, yeah, right, they'll be back. The money's too good. But if you hear the interview that we had with him, he kind of shut it down when I even left him a 1%. I don't know if I said 99.9 or 99, but I left him that little opening, and I even said, boy, it would have been nice to see you in Rampage. He immediately shut that down. He immediately shut down the fact that he just doesn't want to do it anymore. The training camp sucks. And then he named off a bunch of injuries that he had. He said 26 concussions, which I found to be a high number because he always boasted about the fact that he rarely got knocked out and he was able to stay pretty healthy. But who knows? Who am I going to call him a liar? He's been in combat sports for 20 years. There's a good chance he's telling the truth. But here's the thing. There just seems to be a lot of organizations that are sprouting up all over the world. Japan and Russia stand out. And these are the type of guys that just seem to kind of have these, it's almost like they can tell you to fill in the check. Unlimited amount of funds out there. And to make themselves notice, one good way to do it is to bring in a big, popular, polarizing name. Tito fits that bill. So it would have to be two-part. One, he'd have to get paid well. Two, he would have to get a favorable matchup. These guys aren't stupid. If you're putting them in there so you can get beat up by the next Ivan Drago MMA version, if he's going to go to Russia and fight some guy that's 23-0 with 22 knockouts, with a Russian Sambo background and a gold medalist, and you're just getting teed up, I think he'll bypass the money. He named off a few things he's got going on. He's still trying to represent fighters. The Punishment Athletics brand is still around. He wants to work with Bellator. I believe he still has a small gym in Huntington Beach. It seems like he's done pretty well in the real estate, in that field. So I don't think he's hurting for cash, honestly. I think he'll be okay. I think he can do signings. I think he can do seminars. I think he can survive. He'd have to be one of those guys that's down and out, fist throw the money over the course of 3 to 5 years, and maybe as a 46, 47-year-old realizes, okay, I got to go down there and get beat up for $2 million. I'll do it. Maybe something like that. But it's, again, we spent the first 20 minutes talking about how Tito stood out a little bit differently than other fighters in that at least he had a business sense. Therefore, I think it'd have to be one incredible and favorable deal for him to come out. So I'm saying no, I don't think he comes out.
And George, for anybody who hasn't seen the interview on Junkie Radio, they can check it on your YouTube page, right? On the Junkie Radio YouTube page?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to get at it now. So we have youtube.com/MMA Junkie Video or facebook.com/official MMA Junkie. Since the interview just took place yesterday, meaning Wednesday the 24th, it's pretty easy to find them both. But, one thing I'll say is our official Facebook page, again, facebook.com/official MMA Junkie, just has so much info to the stories that appear on our website. So I always recommend people to just go in there and like it. Most of the stories that are on our website are on our Facebook page, along with the full 2 hours of our show. So you can go in there, hit that play button, kind of hear the show as it's happening, and then go through it and just read the other stories. Maybe you're just a headline reader, or maybe you're in the mood to click a story and just dive into it a little bit more. Who knows? But I would direct most people towards Facebook. But yeah, we're there. We're there on YouTube, Facebook. You can go to our website, MMAjunkie.com/radio, and you can hit audio links there. Of course, if you have Sirius XM, we're featured on demand, and that show should be up. Those usually stay up for a week from what I hear, so I think that show's up right now, and it will be for another week. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. I thought we touched on some stuff with him and Dana, with him and Chuck, with him and Rampage, with him and Justin McCauley. So, he was kind enough to give us an extra 10, 15 minutes, and we tried to make the most of it.
Yeah, and like I said, very knowledgeable guys. If you're a newcomer and you're listening to our show and you're not familiar with MMA Junkie, George just gave you all the links to everything, so go check that out about Tito. I have one last question about Tito, and then we'll move on to something else because we do need to move on because we've got something planned in the second part of the show that we mentioned today on Junkie. And by the way, George, DJ Tony and I did not know that either of us were calling the show. That was not lined up. It would just happen to be that way, and it was just kind of crazy because I called him right after, and I was like, I didn't know you were on the line. And anyways, let's move on. What do you think about the California State Athletic Commission not punishing Tito Ortiz at all for holding on to that choke a little bit too long, and John McCarthy physically actually having to push his arms off? And again, guys, these boys have already interviewed John McCarthy earlier on this week, so there's a link to that. If you heard George say the links earlier on, go check that interview out as well. George?
Well, I will say this. I didn't even know Tony was on. What I remember was you called in and then Mr. X called in, but I didn't even know that Tony was on today. Yeah, that kind of caught me off guard there. But all right, so regarding California State Athletic Commission, I didn't even know until you just told me that they weren't going to do anything about it. So, look, on the one hand, I like when there's a precedent, and there has been a precedent in the sport. When you hold on a choke too long, you can get in a lot of trouble. Fined, suspended, lose your job. Ask Bob Aluso-Brawl what happened to him when he held onto a choke.
Yeah.
Tito doesn't have a history of it from what I remember, so he may have gotten a pass there. He's retiring, so they may have just said, fuck it, we're just moving on from this. And the California State Athletic Commission may have also taken into consideration Chael's comments towards, Tito's family. Tito gave an explanation of that. Tito apologized to Big John McCarthy right away. Apparently, maybe Chael backstage apologized to Tito, and maybe the California State Athletic Commission just figured, you know what, let's just all move on. This guy's moving on with his career. Why don't we just move on? Let's just leave it at that. Why use resources? Why have a hearing when, in reality, there may even be no chance of ever collecting a fine? So it wasn't the most egregious offense ever. He didn't hold it for 5 seconds. It was enough that Big John was pretty pissed and admonished him and scolded him and shoved his thumb down his larynx, on his larynx, sorry. But I don't know. I'd have to ask the director and see what they were thinking or why they did it. So I'm just trying to maybe, I guess, put myself in the position of if I was there and I had all that kind of data in front of me, I may just move on with it myself.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with what you just said there. I mean, I think there needs to still be a hearing. There still needs to be an investigation if we want to keep this this system kind of above board. I mean, he doesn't have to pay it, right? Like you said, he's probably going to retire, maybe. But I think that some kind of action should have been taken against Tito Ortiz for doing that, especially in 2017 with these new rule changes, which is another question. Maybe I'll slip in real quick while we're talking about this, George, because we don't have a lot of time because people are going to start calling in soon. But I wanted to talk to you real quick because I've been looking at some of the video coming out from Denver, and of course Denver is not taking on the new rule changes, and they're asking fighters, and they were asking fighters at the last UFC or at the Bellator event whether or not they knew about the new rules, and we're seeing with Denver that they don't even know the difference. The fighters are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, I mean, why do we even change the rules? Let's just get a quick comment, and then we'll move on to something else.
I think the fighters are bullshitting. I think the organization and these meetings, these commissions do a pretty good job of telling you exactly what you're getting into, with whether it's a bad agreement sent to you, whether it's your itinerary for media or itinerary for what the UFC staff needs. You know what time you have to go and weigh in. You know what time the scales open. You know what time Reebok needs you. You know what time the UFC needs to do their photo shoots. You're well of it. You may not have read it, but trust me, it's been presented to you. And I think the fighters, same thing. A lot of them have been playing dumb with USADA. Oh, man, I didn't know you have to let them know when I'm out of the country or here or there. I'm pretty sure you've all been let know one way or another. Now, you may be a guy that, maybe you're some sort of a mountain guy. You only come down the mountain every 3 months and you don't have an email or a cell phone. I might believe you, but I still would probably say, listen, motherfucker, you're a professional athlete. You need to come down that mountain once a week then, and educate yourself. So I find that really, really hard to believe. I mean, these guys are coming from big camps. Let's just start off with maybe a guy like Masvidal or Cerrone, I mean, they're part of big camps. And the first thing USADA did was go to the big camps and sit all these guys down and tell them exactly what's going on. So I have to believe ABC probably did something similar. It's whether the fighter chose to absorb that material, read the material, educate themselves. They probably should have done a better job. But I can't believe that many athletes were left hanging out there like that. Plus, come on, man, this isn't like we're teaching you how to speak a whole new language. I mean, we're just tweaking a few things, like damage being to the forefront of how to score a fight. 10-8 rounds being more common now, and the breakdown on what a 10-9 and a 10-8 may be. You can't, what was it, the clavicle. You can't grab somebody by the clavicle. Okay, fuck. I mean, that's a pretty easy one to absorb. No kidney kick, no kidney strikes using your heel. The 3-point stance. I mean, all this is stuff that one can learn pretty quickly. So I don't know. I heard behind the scenes Denver's been one of the tougher commissions over the years, so maybe it was something where the commission at the same time just didn't want to push it on them. But that's sad because I think we want to get all the provinces in Canada, all the states in America, and all the big cities and countries that participate in our sport all over the world on the same playing field. I mean, okay, they may have missed out this time, but trust me, the next time they go to Denver, they won't miss out that time. So I just don't see the point of it. It's inevitable.
And again, we can check out the interview with Big John on all of the links that you had just said. And I do recommend any interview or anything that you see with Big John McCarthy. Please listen to it if you want to get educated, because that guy knows what he's talking about. So let's transition real quick, George, because there was another story that came out on Junkie, and John Morgan kind of broke it, and he had to change his plans last week to go and see this happen. And I'm talking about the UFC Performance Institute. I thought this was incredible. I mean, not only that the building has gone up so quickly and then that it's ready to use, and I guess that's probably my frozen tundra northern way of thinking, that things that go up very slowly. But this thing has gone up fast. I mean, within a year, I mean, they're already showcasing this facility. And not only John saying that on the MMA Roadshow, but also the video that he put out with Forrest Griffin and the Emperor of the Empire coming out and showing his face. I thought that was amazing. So let's, as a Vegas resident, have you been by this? Is it close to you? Because I know that, Kenny doesn't like to travel that far, so maybe it's out of your way. But have you been by this monstrosity, and have you seen anything about it? Because it's intriguing me, and I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to let you talk now.
I have seen it. It's not that far from me. But I also heard that what they had designed early on, as far as corporate offices, as far as medical, physical, therapy facilities, and then, the athletic room, which has weights and mat space and bags. I heard the plans changed a little bit with WME, IMG coming aboard. I heard so the building's still going to be the same from what they envisioned. But I heard a lot of the people that were maybe going to be housed there may be housed in LA. But anyway, I think what impressed you the most was obviously talking about the athletic facilities, right? And so the athletic facilities do look very impressive. However, I'm still wondering, I think that's going to be the type of place where an athlete can go to recover. When Khabib Nurmagomedov first tore up his knee, the UFC made him get the surgery in Las Vegas, I believe, or LA. And then they have these, apartments, they have these properties where athletes can come and stay for like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because what they want them to do is do their therapy in Vegas. They want to stay on top of them. They don't want these guys to say they've been going to therapy when every other day they've been cutting out, or instead of 90 minutes, they're only going 60 minutes. They want to stay on top of them with the doctors. So that's kind of what Khabib did. That's why we were able to get him on our show a couple times. A couple of years ago, he came in, he did the 2 hours. It was on his day off, or maybe he had already done the therapy. I don't know. But that's what they want to do. They want to have these athletes there in-house. And when they have, Vegas averages about 5-6 shows per year. So those are great opportunities for the athletes to come in and do their camps and maybe wind down their camps in these types of facilities. Anytime they can have the athletes close to them, I think it's a good thing for the UFC. So that's why they're doing it. But I'm just questioning whether the athlete is going to want to do it. Every guy and gal we talk to, most of them prefers to sleep in their own bed, prepare their own meals. They're comfortable with the city where they live in or whatever. And so I just don't know that it'll work too often other than when the fighter really needs them. And that most of the time it's when they're doing like some type of rehabilitation. Because Dana had talked about, we may have more athletes move to Las Vegas and train out of here, but what kind of coaches are going to be there, and are you going to make an athlete leave that coach? I don't know. So I think some stuff needs to be filled in, but whoever does come is going to have a world-class facility for themselves. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting, and just to touch on what you said real quickly about. I remember Lorenzo saying that he hopes that this will entice this training center, this rehabilitation center, will entice fighters to come to Las Vegas and come to live there, because what they're saying right now, George, is that it's going to be free. All of the services are going to be free to every UFC fighter on the roster. And, that kind of just blew my mind for a second because I was like, okay, I didn't actually expect them to take it to that extent. And if a fighter moves to Las Vegas, takes on this training and gets all his training and his physiotherapy for free, of course, he's still going to have to pay for food and such, and his coaching, I don't know how it's going to work, but that could really transform and change the sport. I mean, I've been very hard against the Empire. The new ownership of the UFC. But this may actually allow their fighters to really focus on being fighters. Yes?
Yeah, I guess we need to go, we need to it's, again, I don't want to sound like a naysayer here, but I would say that on paper, yes, that would be very beneficial to the fighters. But these fighters, I've gotten to know them a lot, and they're creatures of habit. A lot of them are lazy, and a lot of them don't think like professional athletes. They think like tough guys who get paid money to fight, not like professional athletes who are looking to constantly look better because if you in the NFL, man, I'm telling you, if you don't make a certain amount of tackles per year, excuse me, or you're not running what you used to run in college, a 4.3, and now you're a 4.4 or 4.5, guess what, man? You're very expendable. And I think a lot of these fighters, they're going to become very expendable going forward. If they're not showing early on that they can compete and be tough and a great athlete, they're not going to fight in the UFC. So right now, it would behoove them for one of them to do that. There's a lot of great gyms in Las Vegas. Cost of living's cheap. A lot of the shows are here. There's a lot of opportunities for a fighter here in Las Vegas. The UFC often calls on fighters to go and talk to the Boys and Girls Club or to maybe participate in, some sort of representation for the UFC. So that's why a lot of fighters have moved here. But I don't know, man. I think a lot of them really just love being where they're at, and I'm not so sure that they may be smart enough to take advantage of these situations.
Okay, so like you mentioned, if this does happen and we see a big boom of fighters moving to this giant facility, it just popped into my head, this question. What do you think it would do to the smaller gyms in Las Vegas? Do you think that this monstrosity will just eat up the smaller gyms, or do you think they'll be able to survive?
No. They'll be able to survive. Most of them, the big gyms. The smaller gyms, maybe. But I'm telling you, these guys are pretty loyal to their coaches. And the coaches are pretty loyal to the athletes. I mean, granted, they make each other money, but I don't see it, man. I see them, like I said, if you're Amanda Nunes and you're fighting Ronda Rousey on this date, rather than come in on the Tuesday of fight week, you're going to come in 2-3 weeks early because you do have these facilities to your advantage. But your coaches are going to come out with you. You're going to come out. You're just going to basically stay sharp and in tip-top shape, and then they'll meet you on fight week. So what are you going to do, take on some new coaches? No, people are just going to skip rope, hit pads, use the ice baths, maybe lift some weights. Maybe they want to be shielded from some of the public or whatever, or maybe other gyms. But no, I just don't think it's going to be used like that. I think extreme couture fighters are going to remain extreme couture fighters. Syndicate will remain syndicate, and so on. There are other fighters that kind of don't really have an affiliation. Yeah, they may come in there, but it's all for selfish reasons. They just don't want to pay the $150 per month at a gym that's required of them. You know what I mean? Or maybe they pistol one off. A lot of them are nomads. They kind of wear out their welcome somewhere, and then they go somewhere else. So we'll see, man. One thing that'll be cool is that they'll probably have all of Tough there. They'll probably have the Tough gym there, and maybe they'll have a big store for fans to come and look. Maybe the new Hall of Fame will be created there. I don't know. That's what I think will be a little bit pretty cool. It'll be a little bit maybe fan friendly, kind of like almost like a Hall of Fame that you hear back in Canton, Ohio, or Springfield, Massachusetts. But as far as being a world class gym, I just don't know. I don't know. I think it'll be more for the employees and for select fighters that are Vegas guys that like to come in there and do their thing, but it won't be it won't replace an American Top Team, an AKA, a Jackson Wink, nothing like that.
Okay, I got one more for you, George. I see we got Showtime on the line. I see you, Showtime. Hang in with me, please. Okay, so I heard on the Fortnite with Ariel Helwani that JP and Arancibia is joined up with the as you like to say, and is going to be kind of the union rep. And it's interesting because JP was the union rep for our own beloved Toronto Blue Jays up in this neck of the woods. And I just thought that was a very interesting tidbit that came out of that Tim Kennedy interview, that these guys are still moving forward and that they're actually taking on, people who are experienced in big time sports. So what are your thoughts about this? Do you have any thoughts about this and moving forward, what this means for the man?
I hadn't heard that interview, so I didn't know that this gentleman had joined. In fact, I'm not even so sure I know who that guy is. But if he's involved in baseball, football, basketball, obviously those are some credentials to begin with. I'm still a little bit of a doubter in terms of the associations and unions actually working. What I do like is that they're being founded and they're creating a stir and people are talking about it and some fighters are willing to align themselves. But it takes more than 5, and I heard 100 were interested, and I haven't heard that has 100 fighters on board. So, you know what I mean? A couple of the other ones are probably going to go through the folding process and go away. So it was nice to talk about. I thought they were very prepared, some of the guys, and the stories they told. Cain Velasquez and the 6 shoulder surgeries or total surgeries that he's had. Tim Kennedy as well, the struggles that he's had. You know, and then, you know, Bjorn Rebney, I thought, came pretty strong with some of those facts because he's worn the hat of the promoter. Those facts about, you know, how much of the pie Zuffa and now WME-IMG was keeping to themselves, how much was being shared with the fighters, et cetera, et cetera. So on that end, I think it's good, but I really believe we're still about at least 5 years away from an actual union impacting the sport. Why? Because half of the fucking roster could care less or even knows what a union does or can do. Unions are more of an American thing from what I can tell. And I just think there's a lot of fighters that, guess what, will step over that line and they will fight because they're happy with what they're making. They're fighters, they're not businessmen. Or maybe they haven't, maybe concussions and CTE, TBI haven't ravaged their country just yet, or maybe they haven't gotten to that level of education yet where they're finding out more of it, so the repercussions are unknown. So it's still the Wild West, brother. I applaud them for trying, but I just don't think they have what it takes to do it. I think the UFC can waive 20% of their roster right now, maybe even 30%, and they would still function, man, without a problem.
All right, so Gigi, we have to pivot here and get to the segment of the show, the second segment of the show, because we have a number of people on hold right now, and we're going to bring in the man who has been waiting the longest, the man that puts the show in time. And guys, we are going to do a little bit of a quick Q&A here with Gigi, but let's bring him in.
You got
Showtime from Tennessee.
when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never
Showtime, how are you this evening?
Hey, how's it going, fellas?
What's up? How you doing,
Let's
Showtime?
let you do that again. We'll edit that out. Hang on there, Gigi. Let's show Showtime do that again a little bit better. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Attaboy. All right, so
y'all, you check
Gigi,
this out.
hang
You
on a
guys
second.
are gonna laugh at me.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Showtime. We're going to laugh at you. Go ahead. Oh, geez, he dropped out. Let's go ahead and move on. We've got to bring in the next guy because he's been waiting a little bit as well. Let's bring in Dean from Georgia.
If I have a great female singer, preferably a black girl, I will do a good Shaka Khan, let me tell you what I want to do. I want to hold you, want to squeeze you, want to, you know, that one?
Yeah,
like 30
Shaka
years
Khan.
old, right? Well, I got to brush myself up on the rap part, but there was this black girl that used to come around and do some karaoke parties back in the day, and she could hit her high notes. And if she delivered, I delivered. Man, we used to be a good tandem back in the day.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, I got to bring in one more person, and unfortunately, I don't have Aaron's
Hey, Gigi.
intro anymore.
Hey, Gigi, was Juliet disappointed when you tapped out at a 2? Huh?
I would say she did bust my chops about it. I've heard it from like 3 or 4 people now, but I'm telling you, man, Big John's he had already
Yeah.
proved his point. You know what I mean?
I know. You
Hey,
know.
Dean,
You know. I'm just.
hey,
I'm
Dean.
just busting.
Dean,
Yeah.
Dean, your girlfriend told me you tapped out at 1 last night too, so be careful throwing stones there, pal.
Who's that?
Everybody, welcome to the show. Aaron from Texas. If you would have let me bring him in properly, welcome, Aaron from Texas.
You know, Dean, that's a very tired act of yours to thank your girlfriend every time you call into a show. You know, you should probably find another gimmick. You know, maybe do like Marco from Wicklow Brother or something to that effect. You know.
I can't even understand
Gimmick
Marco
infringement.
yet. It's been like 7 years.
Gimmick infringement.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's called gimmick infringement, sir.
Yeah, I've been listening almost 8 years. I still can't understand Marco. maybe,
All right,
maybe
guys.
next decade. Maybe next decade.
Before you all take off over the show and I put you on mute because you're all talking over me. Okay, let's get into this second segment of the show, which is Ask Gigi. Gigi, you are still here, correct? Even though these two are fighting with each other?
I am still here.
Okay, so Dean from Georgia, you have the first question. You have the floor. Please, if you have a question for Gigi, ask now.
Does it have to be serious?
No, of
Is it
course it doesn't have
do
to
we
be
have to have
serious. What are you talking
All
about?
right, great, good. So, Gigi, can you please describe a time, because I know you probably terrorized goes growing up. Can you please describe a time, the first time you tried to bark back? What happened?
The first time he
Like
tried
the first
to bark
time you were,
back,
like basically you pissed him off so bad where he tried to like either get you back or fight you back, or can you describe that moment, that time?
Dean, he's 9 years younger than me, man. That just wasn't going to happen. I mean, when I was...
I know, but probably when he was like 13.
No, listen. I would say that maybe as a little kid, I was probably more scared of goes because when I was 12, he was 3. So at 3, you know, he could basically dive off the couch and like Jimmy Snuka and just land on me, and I couldn't do anything to him because he was so little. But, you know, when he was 7, I was 16. You know, he wasn't going to do anything to me there. And then when he was in his high school years, I was, you know, mid-20s. So there just wasn't that lag. There wasn't that catch-up period. I will tell you a funny story, though. He used to, I don't think he actually got those tapes, those Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tapes or anything, but he did learn a little bit of some leg locks. And so one time we were messing around and just kind of like rolling, and he was kind of twisting my knee up. Kind of like unlike any other position you've ever really seen in MMA. I had top position, and I could have easily just drilled him in the face, and he would have let go, but we weren't like that. We weren't brothers that were ever going to strike each other. So it was basically up to me to just basically get out of the hold, and I couldn't without striking. So I actually tapped to it. He was actually twisting my knee where I think he could have ripped up my ligaments if he wanted to, but I had to tap. But that's about the only time. And even then, we weren't mad at each other. We were just training.
All right, we've got a message coming from Aaron. If you would like, Aaron, do you have a from deep in the heart of Texas? Do you have a question for Gigi?
Deep in the heart of Texas, of course I do. Well, Gigi always asks
Correct.
people for a lot of things on MMAjunkie Radio. I want to ask him. I want to play a tournament. I started playing. Ask him one. Gigi, you do have a good street fight story for the guys that you haven't shared before?
Oh,
I don't have many, but I just told one the other day. When I was in Peru, somebody had stolen something out of my uncle's car. He comes into the house and says, "Hey, everybody, you know, there's a robber. I'm looking for him." So one of my uncles comes running out. I was in my pajamas. I came running out. And we're basically looking down the block. I didn't know what he had robbed, what he had stolen. I didn't even know who the hell I was looking for. But I was just behind them. You know, I guess if they said that's him, then I was going to assist in trying to get whatever property he had stolen. I'm not even going to share what the property was because it was so minor, it was not that big a deal. But in a third world country like that, if you steal something and you turn it into a couple bumps, you know, a crack or whatever, then I guess that's what you'll do. And, you know, Peru's a generator of coca leaves and producer of cocaine.
Yeah.
So that's probably where that guy was headed. It was probably just a junkie that was trying to get his hands on some property. We found him. My uncle was patting him down because he's military. He knows how to pat someone down, in the private region. And so next thing you know, these guys are like clinched up. And I just reacted, man. I slugged the guy in the liver. And the guy just kind of folded in two. And that was that. It was like a one-hitter quitter. That was probably my last street fight.
Liver short, as Bob Streeton would say.
That's exciting. Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah,
All right.
I was glad that we were able to get our property back, get out of there, and not have anyone get cut up by a piece of glass or a knife or something.
It sounds crazy in South America, Gigi. Let's move on to the man who puts the show in time. He's back with us. Showtime, do you have a question for Gigi, please?
Yeah, and sorry about that, my guys. Hey, Gigi.
That's all right.
Man, this what I want to do, brother. With I don't know if you and those know that you guys are, pretty much like pioneers, man. Y'all got into the game of pretty much trying to get everybody else turned on to MMA. How does it feel, man, to work with your little brother, man? I mean, I know that got to be an amazing feeling. How does it feel to work with your brother every day?
It's great, and it's maybe 95% great and 5% not great. For one, we live together. We're out here in Vegas alone. All our family and friends are basically in LA, Orange County. So we have each other's back, and that's cool. And at the same time, I'm comfortable with him, so we know that even when we get mad, it's going to get cleared up quickly. I think we can push each other a little bit more than you would like a normal employee. So that's kind of cool. But I would say he's really organized and on time and prompt, and he keeps it together. So he's very valuable to the show in that regard. Whereas I'm the guy that rolls in kind of late, and
siblings that are, a whole lot younger than me. And I just thought that was probably just be amazing, to work with your brother and basically build something from the ground up with your brother. And, and you guys been on the air all these years. That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing, and it must be tough, right, George? I mean, it must be tough working with someone that you are so close to. But I mean, it must also have its perks too, because you guys know each other, right? You guys know, like Goes knows you're gonna come in at 5'2", and you're gonna be there, right? So he knows that, and he's going to commit to doing all the things that need to be done before you get there. And that's what the shows are about. I mean, look, guys, if you think that this show between me and Tony has any kind of thought behind it, I mean, it's kind of a fly by the seat of your pants thing, because we're both busy. We both have lives, but these guys actually commit their lives every day of the week to do a show. I mean, they show up 9 o'clock Pacific time. I mean, you should be getting up earlier, because East Coast time, guys, it's 12 o'clock. Work to our schedule, please. But I mean, it's important for us to realize that these guys are doing this every day of their week. So, Aaron, I'm going to pitch back to you again, because we lost Dean. He's probably off doing karaoke now. But Aaron,
he tapped out at 1.
Question for? Yeah, see, that's exactly it, right? You said that. You threw it out there. So go ahead, Aaron. Another question for Gigi.
Oh, George. Wow, I can pick his brain for once. It's pretty rare for me. Of your 10 years or so, maybe a little longer in the sport, what is one of the proudest moments you've ever had? I know, like, the typical answer would be the 2000 show when you and Goes were on, were on the big billboard at the Mandalay Bay. That was pretty awesome. Just maybe a proud moment where you feel like, everything you've done at that point, made it all worthwhile, because, I mean, we, a lot of us who've been listening to the show a long time have known all the sweat, sweat and tears and blood you guys have put into the show. What was a moment where you just kind of took back, relaxed, and you're like, we made it, man?
Wow. Well, there's a lot of them, but I guess if you're going to take the 2000 show away from me, I would say the 1000 show was pretty powerful for us. But it wasn't like, wow, Goes, look what we've done. Well, no, I guess there was a little bit of that. because here's what happened. I guess somewhere in the 920 range, which would maybe make it like, January or so of that same year, 2011. I told Goes, I go, hey, it turns out our 1,000 show's coming up. It's going to probably be around Memorial Day. That's pretty cool. And so what really turned out to be cool was how much it meant to our listeners. So all the ones that came from all over the world that wanted to be there for our 1,000 show, that was really cool. That I honestly thought maybe 10, 20 people were going to be there. I remember John's wife baked us some cupcakes. I think there was a cake back there. And Jenny, Goes' ex-girlfriend, had put up some streamers. And so I thought that would kind of be the extent of it. But what it turned into, the annual Junkie Gathering and all of the kudos and pats on the back we received in the industry, that was all really cool. But the fact that we were able to look out into the sports book and see that this meant a lot to the people that listen to the show just as much as it meant a lot to us, that was pretty powerful and impactful for us. Show number 1250 and 1500 and 1750 and 2000 were all special because Junkie Gatherings came with it, and Junkie Gatherings have been a blast. But I'd say at 1,000 is when we felt like, holy shit, some people do kind of like this. This show does kind of mean something to someone. I mean, we get accolades and our editor-in-chief, he'll commend us when we have a great interview or we have a stacked lineup or, maybe some of the pieces that they've recapped from our interviews, the great traffic. So we've kind of heard all that. It's great to hear and everything, but this was like a different type of feeling. And the fact that it was people from all over the place. If it had been California, I probably would have said, well, it's mostly our friends and family. But it was just random people that we didn't know that somehow we had talked to on the phone, others we didn't. But yet they boarded a plane or they drove out and they actually spent that time with us. That meant a lot.
So, George, I have a question for you. What is it like when you see yourself on UFC content? I mean, we saw you this weekend on the Countdown show just briefly, but I mean, that's still enough. I mean, if I was on that briefly, I would be like, oh shit, I'm on the UFC content. What is it like for you when you get onto these big things, and how does that feel? I mean, how do you place that in your brain?
Privately, I geek out, but publicly, I kind of try and be a little bit more Joe Cool about it, kind of like the been there, done that type thing, because, we've done it before. I guess this was a little different. The road to the Octagon was on Big Fox. That's pretty cool. I received a couple texts from some casual fans of the sport that are good friends of mine that I know otherwise would not be watching, and they caught them off guard. So that was pretty cool. It put a smile on my face, but I guess between some of the other shows that we've done, Access TV, and we've I guess crossed that bridge already, and we've geeked out over it, and it's been pretty cool, and it never gets old, that's for sure. But guys, I'll tell you what, I've seen fame and money and popularity change a lot of people, and I always wanted to make sure that never happened to me. So just because anybody made me feel special, I didn't want it to ever let it get to my head. I'm a normal dude who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, but I didn't go to no broadcasting school, and so you two could replace Goes and I tomorrow. Honestly, you could go in there, and if you have our black book contact list, you guys could go in there and knock out the show. But like I said, we happen to be in the right place at the right time, and so that's cool. And I applaud our bravery in doing that. Goes has a bachelor's degree from UNLV. He could probably be doing something else. I could probably be doing something else. But it took some balls to leave what we were doing and to start this. And we've had some struggles. It's not really as lucrative as some people think. It can be, and I believe it will be. But right now, it's all good. It's all fun and dandy. And I just feel really, really blessed to be a part of a sport. You know what I mean? And a new sport at that.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, guys, just give me one second here because, just like Conor McGregor says, being late, he doesn't really give a fuck. We got somebody coming to the party a little bit late, and because he's being late, I have to now search for his intro and make sure I got it all ready to go. Anyways, let's bring him in right now.
Not have a network or a show or any of these guys without you, so I definitely wanted to call and say, man, it's great to have you on. I wish we could have you on every week. We really try not to bother you, Gigi. We really do because, man, I honestly could call and text you all the time, but it is an honor to have you on.
Thank you, man. Honestly, you guys should call me more often. I would do it if you want me to. I'm proud of you guys, because it takes a lot of courage to keep going, and there are going to be bumps. I think if anybody asked me, I know you two have, but if anybody asked me, hey, what do you think about me starting a podcast? I'd say don't do it because it's really, really competitive. I don't want people to lose their mind, to lose their pocketbook or whatever. But if you have a passion for something, sometimes the money and everything else doesn't matter. And it seems like you guys have a passion for it. But I applaud you guys. So now that you guys are in it and you guys are waist deep, then I want to try and help when I can. So if you ever need me, holler at me. It doesn't mean I'll always say yes, just because if something's going on. But when I can, I will. We do this show for 2 hours, and then we have a lot of time to rest up, prepare, research, study, watch fights. But we can take, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever we need on a Thursday or whenever your show is, whenever any of the show is to participate if you ever need it. So don't be a stranger.
Hey, I appreciate that, but I do want to talk about the man of the hour because the one thing you mentioned, the passion, and I know Proteus said that, we come in and just do this, but believe it or not, I actually spend over 30 hours a week producing this, and we're always live and unedited, but I do edit the show after. But I want to talk about someone that took a passion to a new level, and that's Aaron from Texas, because I was so proud to see Aaron from Texas in the LFA event. Gigi, it's awesome to have a junkie that's a ref and a judge.
Fuck yeah, man. Goes was next to me, and Juliet was upstairs, and I yelled at them both because Goes had his headphones on, and we weren't sure what fight it was going to happen. So I just remember yelling and going, "Hey, there he is, there he is!" And so then I had to pause the fight a couple times to get a good picture, let it freeze so we could definitely tell it was Aaron. So the fight became secondary at that point. I was just watching Aaron. I was watching him, what kind of positioning he had and how he do it. And I was praying to God that Chevello or Miletich wouldn't bury him, because sometimes refs do get, they do get scolded, and sometimes it's rightfully so. Sometimes maybe it's unwarranted, who knows. But I was praying, and he actually got some praise from Chevello on a couple stand-ups. Miletich backed him up, so that was really, really cool to see. And that think of the balls it takes to go out there and ref two human beings where a life could be taken or a serious injury could occur, and it all can happen in a split second. You got to make these decisions, and whoever won is headed in one direction. Whoever lost, hell, that might be their last fight. They may. At that point in time, they may choose to they may say to themselves, I ain't got it, and so that, a lot rests on your shoulders. And Aaron went out there and he fucking did it, man. He took it head on. He did it. He's done the judging. I haven't seen in any way that it's gone to his head. And like Big John McCarthy said on our show on Tuesday, there's a lot of people that want to go out there and they want to be famous. And look, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it can be a little intoxicating for someone to say something nice, if you're somewhat of a public figure and it's cool to hear or whatever. But there are others that are obsessed with that, and that's not Aaron. Aaron wants to go out there and he wants to help the sport, so I'm really, really proud of him.
And guys,
Gigi, I was told.
Go ahead.
Sorry, guys. I was going to tell, before I started officiating and judging mixed martial arts, I've done other sports. I started with high school wrestling. And then before that, I did, umpiring, Little League and high school baseball, then high school basketball, high school football, et cetera. And I was always told the same common theme in every single sport. It was that if nobody noticed you were there, you did a really good job, because that means, they were focused on the wrestlers, and I agree with that. You don't. And that's why, people were joking before I started, before I told everybody I was going to be, doing the LFA card, like, oh, what handstand are you going to do? I'm like, I'm not going to do no handstand. I don't need to do anything like that. Why do I need to draw attention to myself, Because it's not about me. It's about, if it's high school wrestling, it's about those two wrestlers. If it's mixed martial arts, it's about those two fighters in there. People came there to see them. Nobody there came to see me except for maybe my girlfriend. Maybe. She was there to see a couple of fighters she likes. But that goes without saying.
You have a girlfriend?
All right,
we didn't know.
Guys, we did. We've never heard you push it. Yeah, we've never heard you say thank you very much to her at all.
I thought the dude was.
Anyways, let's move on.
I've never heard of a
Yeah. Okay, so no, seriously, guys, for all the newcomers that don't know what we're speaking about, Aaron from Texas has been a long-time caller to the show, and people have to the MMAjunkie radio show. For those who don't know what I'm speaking about, and people have lambasted him for being from somewhere else and claiming that he's from the whole state of Texas. GG, I look right at you, and I claim that Aaron deserves Aaron from Texas. But Aaron, just quickly, because I need to get to Showtime and I need to get to Showtime's question, but just tell us a little bit about how RFA was for you. I mean, since we have you here, please tell us how it was.
LFA was quite fun. I typically, we get assignments, so far out, and I thought that it passed the deadline. I'm like, okay, I'll catch him next time, because I've worked legacy shows before, and Mick's an awesome dude, Mick Maynard. I actually met him at the Junkie Gathering back in 2012. He's a good dude, and one of the little cool tidbit that I didn't get to share with, I don't think I've shared with anybody who really cared, was Ed Soares was there, because he's the president of LFA, and he. I met him at Bellator event back in WinStar a month before. Just said hi, how you doing? Whatever. He said, I said, hey, Mr. Soares, how you doing? He goes, I'm doing good, Aaron, thank you. And I'm like, he knows my name? Cool, that's a good start. So the night went on, and they had two dueling announcers. Actually, you couldn't tell in the broadcast, but we had 16 total fights. We had 7 prelims, then we had 2 post-lims after the main card was done. We had 2 fights. We had to scramble to the after the television was over because we had so many fights. And it's just once it got going, I mean, I had maybe a small 20-minute break to go say hi to a friend of mine who's in the crowd, in between the last prelim fight and the first television fight. But I mean, from the time we got there at 4:30, 4:45, we were going zoom to 11:15. We had the fighters meeting. The rules meeting 15 minutes before the first bout. I mean, it was a bit chaotic just because how many fights they had, but it all went over really smooth. And LFA, they have an amazing crew. People behind the scenes, people who do certain things that you would never know. They attract no attention whatsoever, but they keep things running smooth. Everything is good there. It was just all around was a really good night for our commission. And a good night for LFA and a good night for the fighters as well. The fights were amazing. It was just, and that's one thing also, one thing you pointed out, Gigi, I think when you were talking to John McCarthy, was my positioning. And you're right, I even texted this to you, I was a little far away at times, but that was because I think it was one of the television fights I had with the two ladies fight, where for 1.5 minutes straight, they were doing nothing but circling. And I was having to circle with them and circle with them and circle with them. So I just found okay, I'm keeping my distance. They're going to figure out where they're going to go, and I'll keep an eye on and stay close, but I'll gravitate towards them. It's one of those things, positioning so important. That's what I like about
that before, and it was a little bit of the same with Vanderlei. It wasn't just, there's so many fighters where the managers come to us. I mean, the guys, they've teed some easy ones up for us, where they just go, hey, you want Brock Lesnar on tomorrow? They're like, fuck yeah, the easiest thing ever, easiest booking ever. But Vanderlei was different, kind of had to stalk him a little bit, figure out what gym he was at, and then have that conversation. And then initially he was going to Brazil, so try again in maybe 2 weeks. So following up, but not looking like a stalker, and then eventually doing it, exchanging info. And then I remember we got tripped up somehow because all I remember is I had to drive to go get him. And so I don't know if he was making it difficult or what he was doing, but I remember I had to drive to his house and get him because we didn't want to take the chance that he wouldn't, a foreign guy in a country who hasn't been there that long. Oh, navigation didn't work, couldn't find you guys. We were podcasting from home. So I remember I drove to get him, and then he said, I'll follow you, and then he followed me in his car. And we went, and, when he was sitting there, and he was actually in front of us, and we started just asking him about all of the stuff he ever did in Pride. It was incredible. And then I remember we got a call from a listener, and he goes, man, I love that shirt you're wearing. And he actually took it off and said, I'm going to sign it for you. You give the guys an address and send it. So that made me happy that we created a moment for a listener, for a fan of his. And so we sent that out, and so we got to ask Vanderlei just a bunch of questions, and we were geeking out because it was Vanderlei, because he was in our house, so it was an in-studio appearance, and more than anything, it really took anywhere from about 3 weeks to 4 weeks to finally land this, so it was a little bit of a chase, too.
Okay, guys, I have a quick question for the whole room. Because, Gigi, you mentioned Vanderlei, and of course we're expecting that the next fight for Chael is Vanderlei. And I've heard some people, being kind of down on this fight, and I want to get everybody in sequence. So we'll go Gigi, Aaron, Showtime. What do you think about Chael versus Vanderlei, Gigi? I mean, I don't really care if he lost against Tito. This is a fight we've been wanting to see for a while, and you brought it up, so I have to talk about it real quick.
Listen, when the music comes on, and if I'll just use the UFC for example, but when a fight has just taken place and everybody's sipping on their drinks, eating their popcorn or their hot dog or rushing back from the bathroom, and you've all probably been in an arena, but you hear that da na 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 na, and you see both fighters' faces, you can tell, man. You can tell which of the fights that means something, because the crowd always goes, ooh, like, fuck yeah, like, here we go, right? And which ones do they usually do it the loudest to? For one, if it's a big title fight, you just got to, because it's the best in the division, and the title may change hands, so that might happen. Or two exciting fighters that you've been wanting to see for a long time. But for sure, two fighters that do not like each other, who have built up some heat and, some hatred for each other, and you just know one of those two guys is going to go home eating a lot of crow and feeling like shit, and the other guy's going to get the gloat. Those are the ones that get people going. And I'm telling you, Bellator could announce this tomorrow for it to happen in June. Bellator could announce it in May for it to happen in November. It doesn't matter. Some people, most people, it's easy to just clown on shit and say, oh, man, they're old, they're this, they're that, TRT, whatever. Okay. But when the fucking fight's about to happen, how can you not tune in? These guys despise each other. You know what I mean? And either the American gangster is going to get his over yet on another Brazilian, well, hell, I don't know how he started against the Brazilians. I think he's beating a couple. I don't know. But either he's going to get one over on this Brazilian, or maybe he's going to pay. I think Vanderlei wanted to pay because he was representing Brazil back in the day. So some of that will come out. And, this might be that one payback, man, for someone that just despises Chael, and now Vanderlei maybe gets to put it on him, or maybe it'll go backwards. I don't know, man. So we can all clown on it, but Bellator has their system of doing things. This will draw ratings. The fight's not going to be like it would have been 5 years ago. I think we can all agree with that. I think Vanderlei and Chael could agree with that. But it doesn't matter. They both have aged at the same time. So it's going to still be a pretty balanced act between both guys. And again, it's going to be somebody's night. It's not going to be someone else's night. So I'm down, man. I really am. Plus, it puts money in their pockets. And I'm all for the fighters making some money. I think some of these guys that fought for $200K and in Japan or whatever they did here, they're gonna miss out on those $1 million paydays that are coming up. Sometime in the next 5 or 10 years. So let them get some money when they get a chance, because they've earned it.
Aaron, do you have any thoughts about Chael versus Vanderlei?
I agree with Gigi. I think some heat's been lost. Some steam has been lost since they were scheduled to fight in 2014, and that obviously fell through. That said, in the honors of the MMA podcast, hashtag would watch any day of the week, twice on Sunday.
That's right. Very nice. Showtime, let's throw it to you. Is this something that interests you? Because there's a lot of shade on Twitter that says, Chael's not worth it. What do you say?
Yeah, I think this would be a good fight. This actually is a better matchup, I think, for Chael than fighting a guy like Tito. He's basically fighting a guy more his size. And then with the heat, and I know Vanderlei is going to bring it. So I think that'll give Chael more interest in probably going toe-to-toe. I think the build-up to this would be, because you never know what Vanderlei will do. He's an exciting guy, too. So I never expect unexpected, when it comes to him. So I would love to see it.
Yeah, and George, we're probably going to see a bunch of videos from Vanderlei's basement with a bunch of heavy metal rocking in the background, right? Leading up to this fight. I mean, guys, I might be a bit nostalgic, but I'm very excited for this fight. So look, guys, we really need to let Gigi go. So let's maybe have another round of questions. We'll go one more from Aaron, one more from Showtime, one more from me. I don't think DJ Tony's back in. He might be on the toilet. So Aaron, why don't you go ahead and give us another question for Gigi, please?
Okay, wow, on the spot again. All right, let's come up with here real quick. Gigi, is it true? I've been hearing rumors about you for a long time. Can you tell us about how, because I know for everybody who listens to the MMAjunkie radio show, how you and Goes got started, but I kind of want to hear a story from when you and Goes were hanging out with old friend of Junkie Radio Show, Sammy T. Squid. Like, tell us a good story from that time when you guys were, I believe you guys were either working at the same business, or I think Goes and Sammy was. Can you tell us like an old story from California before you guys moved up to Nevada?
Yeah. So Squid has always been involved in title insurance, and I had just tried school for a second time, and I wasn't feeling it, kind of going at night. So I had a full-time job during the day, and the boss that I had was kind of a square, and he couldn't believe some of the shit I was doing. He was my friend. He was a lawyer. He was cool, but he was a little bit of a square, and he just couldn't believe that on one weekend I had gone out with a chick and gotten some, and 2 weeks later I went out with a chick and gotten some. I was, it wasn't like I was fucking George Clooney and 5 chicks in 1 week. It wasn't anything like that. It was just, maybe a good summer. And so, he'd just go, hey, how'd it go? And I just kind of smiled. It's not like I was giving him details or whatever, but all of a sudden this guy got it in his head every time, like, if a girl called work, that I was just some sort of a playboy. And because I'd go out and drink, that I also was an alcoholic. And because I always kind of had like a different outfit, that I was a habitual spender. So he actually wanted to put me into a 30-day program for treatment. He was going to pay for it all, and I care about you, and all this stuff. But I think you're spiraling out of control. Well, really, I was just a fucking guy. What guy in his 20s isn't chasing tail and getting drunk? Going to happy hour or getting drunk with his buddies and doing stuff. But because he just wasn't, he had a wife and kids, and he was just conservative, never did all that. He just thought I was some sort of a rock star. So I was telling my buddy Squid about it, and he was like, you know what you should do? You should just go. It's a 30-day vacation because you get paid, right? You can just tell a bunch of stories and whatever. And I seriously considered it just to be a dick, just to do it, just because it really pissed me off that he had the nerve that he thought he could do that to me. And so I was going to, except another buddy told me, he goes, hey man, how are you going to look yourself in the face? He goes, plus
that might follow you or who knows what. He goes, you don't have any of these problems. And really, the one vice that I have is that I gamble, and he didn't even know about that one. So if anything, if he was going to pin anything on me, it would have been send me to Gamblers Anonymous, which I'm not that bad, but still. So I elected not to go, and then I just told him, I go, fuck, man, that kind of sucks working here because now I just kind of have to keep to myself and all that shit. And he goes, well, why don't you just come work over here? I knew nothing about title insurance, and I said, all right. And he made it so easy. He goes, show up on Monday. So he hired me. He was my boss. And and then like about a year later, my brother was complaining about where he was at, and I told him, I told Squid, I go, hey, you got any openings here? He goes, for who? And I go, Goes. And he goes, does he own a tie? And I go, yeah. He goes, well, then tell him to come in. He had no interview, nothing. He literally just showed up, filled out paperwork, and boom, he was in. So it was kind of funny that Squid was our boss because, him and I were best friends from high school. And obviously he knew my little brother. And so I guess we kind of were shielded a little bit. We could walk in a few minutes late. Nobody would say anything because we were cool with the boss, I guess. So that was kind of fun back in the day to ride those little coattails for a while. But, yeah, the one thing Sammy and I knew was we figured out how to gamble, and we figured out what were good plays and what were bad plays, and we never were shy about learning from others. And that's why Squid's been able to do well at this. That's why he comes on Fridays during football season, because he won a huge contest here in Las Vegas with college football, and that gained him a lot of credibility here in the city. Now, either way, it's tough to be consistent, so some years haven't been as good as others, but I remember at least a 3 solid year run where he was 60% or better. He won that contest, so he's got a spot on our show as long as he wants.
Awesome. Okay, so last question from Showtime, because we need to get out of here. Showtime, you got a question? One more question for Gigi?
Gigi, be honest, man. How did you start dating the beautiful Juliet, man? You overachieved, man. You know that.
Juliet, she cut hair. She's a cosmetologist, and she cut hair close to where I lived. So I went in there, and it was my first time in that spot, and I just love pretty girls. So I looked around, and I said, can I use your restroom? And they said, yeah, So I hadn't filled out my name because they kind of rotated amongst who was who. So while I was in there, I just asked, how much is it and everything. But really, it was just a scouting mission to see if there was anybody cute there and to get their name so that when I came in the next time, I could write down the name of that person. So that's what I did. I found out her name. So then the next couple days later, I called and I said, Juliet or whatever. Yeah, she's working. And I signed my name. But I came to find out she was married. So I was like, oh, man, that sucks. So whatever. But she was cutting my hair. She was super cool and everything. Her and I kept in touch over the years because she, would cut my hair. And then, so this was around 2001 or so, 2002. And then around 2010, I had called her because I was going to be in California. And I was, by then her and I were friends, you could say. So she was more than just the girl that cut my hair. So she stopped cutting it for a while because she kind of got out of that business. But I called her just to see if she was cutting again, and it turned out she could do it for me. But things had changed. She actually had just lost her dad, and she had been separated from her husband and for a few years. So that's kind of about the time where we reconnected, started hanging out like friends and dating, and then eventually she moved in with me here in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay. That's we're getting deep. Okay, so guys, I appreciate you, Aaron, and I appreciate you, Showtime, for staying on with us. Dean asked one question and then needed to go get to singing some Radiohead and karaoke. So I appreciate you both coming on. And Aaron, we'd love to have you back on to speak about LFA a little bit more and your experience with judging. But I have to let you guys go now because to be honest with you, George is a bigger star than you. I'm going to be honest. But anyways, thank you both for being on the show, and I appreciate you coming in. But I got to let George go so that he can go back to his beautiful girlfriend, like Showtime just mentioned. So let's go, Showtime. You want to give your outro, and then Aaron will get you to go out as well. So Showtime.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. Anytime I can be on with you guys, I love it. And Gigi, I love you, man, like a brother from another mother.
I love you too, buddy. It's great to know you. It's great to know Aaron, all you guys, man. You guys really have a special place in my heart. You guys are, I feel like you guys are, when the movie's over and the credits are rolling, you guys are characters in, our movie, I guess. And so you guys calling in, that's huge. Not a lot of shows in MMA are call-in shows, and I respect their reasons why, but man, I want to know the pulse. The fans are the pulse of the sport, so I want to know what you guys are thinking. So it really means a lot when you guys hold for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you're part of our show. And so thank you for that type of dedication, for downloading the show, for listening, to the whole show, for calling into the show, and even, coming by and visiting us. Really, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, Showtime and Aaron.
Showtime?
Yeah, thank you, guys. I had my phone on mute for a second. I was doing something, but thank you. And it's a pleasure, man. Love the show. I'm just glad that guys like us can just talk. We just got the privilege to be able to call in and speak to you guys. And, we're no fighters. We, a couple of us may train a little bit or whatever, but just the privilege to be able to call in, man, is a blessing.
Well, keep doing it. We look forward to more of your calls, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Okey-doke, guys.
And unfortunately, go ahead.
No, I was saying you guys take care, and I'm going to get on out of here and get back to trucking. I'm going to be up all night, so I'm about to get out of here.
Yeah, and you know what?
Virginia
is for lovers, brother. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, guys.
All right. Unfortunately, we lost Aaron, and he hasn't called back in. I hope I didn't offend him with something I said. So let's move on to DJ Tony. You've been here. You've been editing the show. So if you want to say goodbye to Gigi, let's get that done now.
Yeah, you know what? I want to echo what Showtime said, Gigi. And obviously, Aaron, we really value, listen, we value everyone's time in doing the little show that we do. Gigi, we've learned a lot. It's been a long time since I was on air, so it's been quite some time, but I got to be honest with you. No one does it better than you guys, Gigi. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of your show. It's an honor and it really is an honor to have you on our little show, and we just want to do good by you guys. And literally, I try to espouse on the behalf of Junkie as much as I can. As you know, I do the MMA Minute and all this, but we're here because of you guys. So, again, thank you for everything.
Well, thank you. And I've seen a lot of that stuff. I see a lot of the plugs you put in for the show. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for your calls to the show, Proteus, the same. And it's been really, really fun to hang back and bullshit with you guys and, talk Tito and, talk about Junkie Radio, talk about Amp Radio. It's been really, really fun. So I meant it. You guys ever need me to come on back, I'd love to.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Gigi, is we were, Tony and I were talking earlier on today, and thank you, Tony, very much for the call. And you know what it is we would like to have you more on the show, but it was kind of like I don't know if you listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, but recently Tom Segura and the Machine, I can't remember his name right now, but they were saying, we're friends with these guys. Yeah, Bert, exactly, Bert.com, if you want to buy some gear. you know, we kind of feel the same way. We're not we feel like we're not worthy, you know, like from Wayne's World, and we don't want to bother you guys because we know you're busy. But if you want to be on the show more, that we would love to have you. And that's the main thing right there. But Gigi, I want to thank you very much. I'm going to run some Van Halen right now as we close out. If you want to push anything, or if you want to say goodbye to the fans, please do it right now. And I thank you very much, Gigi, for being on the show, on Proteus's Primetime Show. We kept you a lot longer than I said I would, so anything you want to say, please do right now.
Well, thank you to anybody that's listening out there. It's been a blast hanging out with you guys. Thanks for having me. And thanks for, the shameless plugs earlier. And